When you're the middle child in a family of 5, you learn pretty quickly how to disappear. Not physically, just emotionally, mentally. You learn how to read the room before you even enter it. You learn how to cut your sentences in half because no one's really listening anyway. My name's Jonah. I'm 27, and up until recently, I thought being invisible was just the role I was born into. My older brother, David, was the golden child. Captain of the football team, business degree, now runs some marketing agency that he never stops talking about. My younger sister, Claire, is the sweet one. The baby. The one who cries and gets hugged, stumbles and gets caught. Me? I was the responsible one. The quiet one. The Jonah will understand one. It's not that I didn't love my family. I did, or at least I thought I did. But love can rot, I've learned. Especially when it goes unreturned for years. Growing up, our house wasn't violent or chaotic. It was just cold. My mom died when I was 10, and after that, Dad sort of checked out. He didn't leave, not physically. He still made dinner, microwaved, of course, and worked his 9 to 5. But he stopped looking at us like we were his kids. He started looking through us. David stepped up fast. He was already 14 and knew how to twist grief into advantage. He became Dad's second-in-command almost overnight, while I was still trying to figure out if it was okay to cry in my room when no one was watching. Claire was too young to remember much. She just knew how to smile at the right moments and get away with everything. I moved out at 19. No big announcement, no fight. I just packed my stuff and left. I didn't even get a good luck from Dad. I got a text from Claire that said, "Miss you already," smiley face, and nothing from David. I built my own quiet life. Got a small place an hour away, worked IT support, then cybersecurity. Nothing glamorous, but I liked it. I liked peace. But every few months, I'd get pulled back in. A birthday dinner, a family emergency, or Claire begging me to visit for the holidays because it's weird without you. So I'd show up, stand around like a coat rack, and leave with the same hollow feeling every time. The last time I came home was a Sunday, 3 weeks ago. Claire called me crying. Real tears this time, not the performative kind. She said Dad was selling the house. Said he was doing it without telling her and that David was in on it. Now, Claire still lives at home, working part-time at a daycare while studying to be a nurse. She's never really had to be an adult, not the way I did. And as annoying as I found her sometimes, I still cared. So I drove down. The house looked the same as always. Beige siding, chipped mailbox, the creaky porch step that everyone forgot to fix. I parked in the driveway next to David's brand new Range Rover and just sighed. Of course he was here. Inside, the air felt heavier than usual. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee, scrolling through something on his phone. He looked up when I walked in, gave me a grunt of acknowledgement, then went back to scrolling. Claire came down the stairs barefoot, wrapped in an oversized hoodie, eyes red. She ran to hug me, and I hugged her back, trying to ignore how small and fragile she felt. "They didn't even ask me," she whispered. "He said I should start looking for a roommate. Like I'm just supposed to disappear." David walked in from the living room then, holding a bottle of water like it was a prop in a commercial. "Oh, look who decided to show up. Thought you'd ghost us again." He smirked like it was a joke, but he didn't wait for me to laugh. Just patted me on the shoulder and walked past like I wasn't a real person. Just part of the set. We sat down in the living room, and Dad started talking like we were in a board meeting. "I'm getting older. The house is too much. I've decided to sell it. David's helping me find a new place, something smaller. Claire, you'll have to start figuring out your next step." "Next step?" I asked. "She's still in school, Dad." "She's 23, David cut in. "Most people have jobs and apartments by now. Can't baby her forever." "She's not being babied," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You're blindsiding her. And since when do you get to decide everything?" David rolled his eyes. "Someone has to. You clearly don't want the job." That stung more than I expected. Not because it wasn't true. David had stepped into a leadership role in the family, but he wielded it like a sledgehammer. And I had distanced myself. But that didn't mean I didn't care. I looked at Dad, hoping he'd step in, say something fair. But he just took a sip of coffee and said, "Let's not start a fight." I should have left then. Should have hugged Claire and driven away. But something inside me, it wasn't anger exactly, more like disappointment with sharp edges, made me stay. "You can't just toss her out because it's convenient," I said, locking eyes with David. "This isn't some startup you're streamlining. It's a home." David chuckled, but it was humorless. You've been gone for years, Jonah. You don't get to walk in here and pretend like you're the moral compass. Dad sighed, louder this time. He's right. You always did have a way of showing up late and acting like you knew better. Maybe you should have been around more. I felt like I'd been slapped. Not because of what he said, but because of how easy it was for him to say it. Like he'd been waiting to let that line slip for years. Claire started crying again, and I stood up, heart pounding. You're seriously okay with this? Kicking her out? Selling the house behind her back? Dad shrugged. It's time. That's when David snapped. You're the reason this family is falling apart, he said, voice suddenly louder. You show up once in a blue moon, stir the pot, and then disappear. Maybe it's better if you disappear for a while. I looked at Dad, hoping, begging, for some pushback, for some kind of defense. But he just nodded and said, maybe he's right. I didn't say a word. I didn't yell or cry or throw anything. I just turned around, grabbed my keys, and walked out the front door. The porch creaked under my feet like it always did, but it sounded different this time. Like a goodbye. I drove straight home that night, didn't even check my phone. I put it on silent, took a long shower, and fell asleep trying not to think about the way Dad's face looked when he said those words. Like it was a relief to let me go. This morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and a single text from Claire. Come back, something's happened. And I swear my stomach dropped like a stone. The drive back felt longer than it should have. My GPS said 62 minutes, but my thoughts stretched every second into something heavier. I didn't even get out of my pajamas. Just grabbed my keys, no breakfast, no coffee. That single text from Claire, come back, something's happened, played on a loop in my head like a broken record. No details, no explanation, just enough words to tie a knot in my stomach. I called 3 times on the road. She didn't answer once. When I pulled into the driveway, David's Range Rover was gone, but Dad's car was still there. The porch light was still on. Morning sun fighting with the dim yellow glow, like the house couldn't make up its mind if it was asleep or not. I knocked once, twice, then just opened the door. Claire was sitting on the couch in the same hoodie from the night before, her knees hugged to her chest. Her phone was in her lap, screen cracked right through the middle. Her eyes were puffy and red, not from crying, but from not crying. The kind of look that said she'd already run out of tears. What happened? I asked, stepping closer. She didn't answer right away, just motioned toward the kitchen. I turned, and there he was. Dad. Not hurt, not unconscious. Just sitting there. At the table. Packing a duffel bag. He looked up like I was the mailman or something. No guilt, no emotion. Just tired eyes and a flat. You're here. I stared at the bag, then at him. Where are you going? I'm moving in with David, he said. Like it was obvious. Like it was already decided. What? Claire's voice broke behind me. He came down this morning, told me to leave by the end of the week. That I'd had a free ride long enough. I turned back to Dad. You said you were selling the house. You didn't say you were kicking her out today. I didn't say today, he said. But David made some good points. He's got an extra room. It's better this way. Better for who? That's when I noticed it. The manila envelope on the table. The corners were slightly bent, like someone had been gripping it too hard. I didn't even ask, I just picked it up. Inside were copies of documents. Sale agreements. A wire transfer summary. A final notice from the title company. The house wasn't being sold. It had been sold. 2 days ago. Without a single word to Claire. I felt the breath leave my chest. You already sold it? He didn't flinch. We didn't think you'd be interested. David handled the paperwork. I signed where I was told. We got a good offer. I looked at Claire, who was just staring at her phone like she wanted to disappear. So that's it. No warning, no backup plan, nothing? You're just, what? Leaving her homeless. Dad finally stood up. She's an adult. She'll figure it out. Something cracked inside me at that. Not loud. Just a hairline fracture in the part of me that still thought maybe he had a heart buried under all that detachment. I told you I needed time, Claire said softly. You said I had time. Dad slung the bag over his shoulder like it weighed nothing. Plans change. And just like that, he walked past me. No hug. No apology. Not even eye contact. The door clicked behind him, and it was like the house exhaled. Claire didn't cry. Not this time. She just got up, walked to the kitchen sink, and turned on the faucet like she was trying to drown out the silence. I stood there with the envelope still in my hand, staring at the spot Dad had just vacated. What do we do now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't have an answer. The next few days were a blur of cardboard boxes and awkward texts from distant relatives who had no idea and wished they could help. David never called. Not once. Dad sent one message that read, "Hope everything works out. Take care of your sister." Like he was absolving himself of all responsibility with a text. I took time off work. Helped Claire move what she could into a storage unit I paid for. She stayed at my apartment for a while, sleeping on the couch with her headphones in every night, zoning out to the same 5 sad playlists on repeat. I didn't ask her what she was listening to. I figured whatever it was, it helped her hold it together. About a week later, she got a part-time job at a diner nearby. Started looking at studio apartments. But you could tell it still haunted her. The look on Dad's face. The way he left. The fact that David, our brother, had orchestrated the whole thing without blinking. Then one night, I came home from the store and found her sitting at my desk. My laptop open. My bank statements on the screen. "Hey," I said gently. "What are you doing?" She looked up slowly. "You sent them money." I didn't lie. "Yeah." "Why?" "Because they asked." I'll never forget the look she gave me. A mix of betrayal and confusion. Like I'd switched sides in a war she didn't even know we were fighting. "They kicked me out. Sold the house. Left me with nothing. And you sent them money?" "It was for Dad's medical bills," I said. "At least, that's what he said." She scoffed. "Of course he did." That night, we didn't talk much. She went to bed early, and I stayed up staring at my phone, scrolling through texts from Dad I hadn't replied to. Messages asking if I could spot him for the insurance gap or help with moving fees. All wrapped in guilt-laced bows. I wouldn't ask if I had any other option. David's covering most of it, but we're a little short this month. I had been sending him money for months. Not much, maybe a few hundred here and there, but enough. Enough to keep the illusion going. And I realized something then. He didn't ask David, because David wouldn't have helped. He asked me, because I always did. 2 weeks later, Claire finally found a place. Tiny studio, barely enough room to breathe. But it was hers. I helped her move in, carried boxes up narrow stairs, and pretended not to notice the water stain in the corner of the ceiling. She smiled like she was okay, but I could tell she was still watching the door, still hoping maybe Dad would show up. He didn't. Then the real bomb dropped. Claire came home from work one afternoon with a letter in her hand. No return address. Just her name, handwritten on the front. Inside, a formal notice. David was filing for emergency power of attorney over Dad's estate. Health-related, which would include access to everything. Claire wasn't mentioned once. Neither was I. We didn't even know Dad had health issues. He never said a word. But apparently, David was already in the process of moving Dad into a long-term care facility and getting control over his finances. The house money, the joint accounts, the remaining investments. All of it. I called David that night. He answered on the second ring like he'd been waiting. "Jonah," he said, like I was a nuisance. "To what do I owe the honor? Why didn't you tell us?" "Tell you what?" "That you were going after Dad's estate." He didn't even try to deny it. "Because it's none of your business. Claire's not in a position to make decisions, and you haven't been part of this family in years. Someone had to take responsibility. He's not dying, David. He's not well either. And frankly, I'm done watching him struggle because you two can't get your lives together." There it was, the mask slipping. "You're not doing this for him," I said, voice low. "You're doing this for you. Think what you want. I'm protecting what's left of our family." And then he hung up. Just like that. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The moment I realized this wasn't about money or control. It was about power. David had always been the favorite, the fixer, the one who made the rules and broke them in the same breath. And I had always been the one who let it happen, who stood at the edge of the family picture, just out of frame, watching it all go down. But not anymore. Not this time. Because if David wanted a war, I'd give him one. And I wouldn't be fighting fair. I didn't go nuclear right away. That's not how I operate. David likes loud wins. He wants people to know he's in charge. Me? I've always been the quiet one. The observer. The shadow in the room that remembers everything. And it turns out, being overlooked for most of your life gives you a kind of power too. People forget you're even there. And when they do, they say things. They slip up. They underestimate you. Still, for a while after that call, I did nothing. Not out of fear, out of exhaustion. I felt drained in a way I couldn't explain. My dad was gone. Not dead, just unreachable. My brother had locked us out of everything. Claire was trying to rebuild with next to nothing, and I kept thinking about that one line Dad said before walking out. Maybe it's better if you disappear for a while. That sentence haunted me. I didn't tell Claire about the call. I didn't tell her I knew about the power of attorney filing or that David was already meeting with estate lawyers. She was fragile enough. She'd just started settling into her new apartment, decorating it with thrift store finds and cheap fairy lights like a teenager trying to make her dorm room feel like home. She was working 6 days a week and still struggling to afford groceries. The last thing she needed was to hear that David was tying a legal noose around our family's neck and grinning while he did it. I hit my own version of rock bottom the night. I checked my savings account and realized I had barely enough to pay my rent. Between helping Claire move, covering her deposit, paying for Dad's medical bills, and fronting the storage unit costs, I'd burned through my emergency fund. And it hit me all at once. I was 27, broke, and barely holding the pieces together. My job wasn't stable either. We'd had layoffs recently, and my name had been on a spreadsheet labeled Phase 2. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, the lights off, computer open to a spreadsheet of monthly bills. I remember just staring at it, zoning out completely. Not thinking, not planning, just staring, like maybe the numbers would change if I looked long enough. They didn't. I slept on the floor that night. I didn't even brush my teeth, just curled up in a hoodie. And when the morning sun hit my face through the blinds, it felt like a reminder that the world didn't care how tired I was. That's when something shifted in me. There was no dramatic speech, no movie montage, just a quiet, painful realization that no one was coming to fix this. David wouldn't apologize. Dad wouldn't wake up one day and say, I was wrong. The house wasn't coming back. The childhood I clung to like a bad habit. It was over. All of it. Burned to the ground. But maybe I could build something new. I started small. I opened a Google Doc and titled it, The Plan. I listed out every skill I had, every connection I hadn't called in, every loose thread David might have left behind. Then I opened another tab and began researching estate law, power of attorney rights, financial oversight loopholes, anything that could give me a foothold. I also started freelancing again. I'd done some cybersecurity contract work a few years back, mostly low-level stuff, password audits, data risk evaluations for small businesses. Boring work, but it paid. I reached out to a couple old clients and got 2 hits almost immediately. It wasn't glamorous, but within a month, I'd pulled in enough to start breathing again. Claire noticed the change, even if I didn't say much. You're working late again, she said one night while we were eating takeout on my floor. I'd sold my dining table for extra cash. Yeah, I said, sipping cold coffee, trying to get ahead. She didn't ask for details, just nodded and quietly slid her half-finished noodles into my fridge like she always did. And for the first time in a long time, I saw her relax. Just a little. As I rebuilt, I started watching David more closely. I followed his company's Instagram. I set Google alerts for his name and his agency. I scraped the business registry and found something interesting. He'd launched a new investment subsidiary last year. Fancy name, but the filings were messy. Inconsistent addresses. One of the forms was signed by someone who didn't exist. A quick LinkedIn search confirmed it. Fake employee. Classic paper trail cleanup. I took screenshots. I backed up everything. And then I started digging into Dad's new care facility. It wasn't what you'd think. No white halls and friendly nurses. It was an upscale apartment complex in a rich suburb, with a concierge and in-house medical check-ins. The kind of place that billed itself as independent senior living with full concierge health management. Translation, a retirement resort where they check your blood pressure while you sip martinis. Claire and I went together. We said we were dropping off medication. The front desk didn't even ask for ID, just buzzed us in and pointed down the hall. Dad looked surprised when we walked in. Not guilty, just surprised. Like he hadn't planned for this part of the story. Jonah, Claire, what are you doing here? Claire's voice cracked immediately. Why didn't you tell me you moved here? He looked tired. Frail even. But his words were firm. David said you were upset. I didn't want to make it worse. Upset, she echoed. You kicked me out of my home. He winced, but didn't apologize. Just sat down slowly and asked if we wanted tea. We didn't. I looked around the place. Expensive furnishings. Wall-mounted flat screen. Smart thermostat. The works. You're paying for all this? I asked. He hesitated. David's covering the upfronts. He said we'd figure it out once the accounts were settled. And by settled, I said, you mean after he gets full control of everything you own? Dad didn't answer. Claire left the room then. Too angry, too hurt. And that's when I leaned in and asked, why him? His voice was barely above a whisper. Because he said he had a plan. So did I. He looked up, and for the first time in years, he actually looked at me. You always waited for someone to ask. I just nodded. It was true. I never wanted the crown. But I'd be damned if I let David wear it after everything he'd done. By the third month, things started falling into place. I had a stable freelance gig with a fintech company and 2 regular consulting clients. My income was higher than it had ever been, and I was finally out of the red. I got my own health insurance, paid off my credit card, and moved into a slightly bigger apartment with a pull-out bed so Claire didn't have to crash on a couch anymore. She started smiling again, laughing even, got promoted to assistant lead at her daycare job, and started tutoring part-time on the weekends. Her apartment looked more like a home. Cheap rugs, a crooked bookshelf, potted plants that somehow weren't dead. And one night, as we were walking out of a ramen shop, she stopped mid-step and looked at me. You're not the same. I blinked. What do you mean? You walk like you're taller now. I smiled, but I didn't answer. Because she was right. And I wasn't done yet. I had leverage now. I had proof David had used a fake employee signature in a business registration. I had screenshots of him shifting funds between personal and business accounts. I had a copy of a lease agreement for a luxury condo that he claimed was a company office, but was actually his secret crash pad when he didn't want to drive home. And I had something even better. A recording. One night, a month earlier, I had called David again. Pretended I wanted to help. Told him I was reconsidering our roles in Dad's care, and maybe we should work together after all. I knew he'd gloat. And he did. On a recorded line. Said the words, he's better off out of the picture, honestly. Claire's a mess, and Jonah's a ghost. I'm the only one who's ever done anything real in this family. Dad finally sees that. Every syllable? Crystal clear. I didn't tell Claire right away. But I will. Because now I'm ready. This time, I won't be walking out the door. This time he will. I didn't tell Claire everything right away, not because I didn't trust her, but because I knew what she'd say. Don't stoop to his level. Just move on. We're doing fine now. She wasn't wrong. We were doing better. She was slowly piecing her life back together, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of mine. But doing better doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't wipe away the memory of Dad nodding while David told me to disappear, or the way they kicked Claire out without a second thought. You can't outrun that kind of thing. Not really. It settles in your bones, sits behind your ribs like a stone. And I knew David hadn't stopped. He never did. He was the kind of person who couldn't exist without dominance. The kind who viewed life like a chessboard, every person a piece to maneuver. The difference now was, I wasn't a pawn anymore. I was watching the board, and I was done playing his game. I was going to flip it. But first, I needed to know exactly what he had. The first step was simple: information. David had filed for medical power of attorney, but I wasn't convinced Dad had understood what that meant, or what he'd signed. My dad was sharp once, but after years of coasting and declining motivation, he'd become passive. Tired. The kind of tired that made it easy to manipulate. I knew David could have used that to his advantage. So I started digging. I requested a copy of the POA filing through the county clerk's office, under the guise of being part of the family. Took a few emails and a couple awkward phone calls, but I got it. What I found was damning. Dad's signature was there, but it was dated 2 days after the house had sold, which meant David had filed the paperwork after moving Dad into the new place, which meant Dad hadn't signed it as part of some logical long-term care decision. He'd signed it under David's roof, under David's supervision, likely surrounded by David's lawyers. I double-checked the witnesses listed. One of them? David's business partner. Conflict of interest? You bet. I printed everything. 3 copies. One for me, one for a lawyer, and one for insurance. Next, I needed someone who understood the game better than I did. I wasn't a legal expert. I was a cybersecurity analyst. I knew how to build firewalls, trace suspicious logins, and sniff out phishing scams. But estate law? Financial manipulation? That wasn't my world. So I reached out to someone who did live in that world. Her name was Marissa Chong, and I hadn't spoken to her since college. We met in our sophomore ethics class. She was a pre-law student who had once helped me fight a dorm charge over a fake cheating accusation. She later went on to become a probate attorney in the city. We'd followed each other on LinkedIn for years, but hadn't interacted much. I sent her a message. Hey, long time. I have a weird situation with my family involving a power of attorney and possible misuse of funds. Could I buy you coffee and pick your brain? She responded in less than 10 minutes. I'm intrigued. Bring receipts. Friday at 2? My office. I showed up early with a folder thick enough to make me nervous. Marissa looked exactly the same. Sharp eyes, clean blazer, and a no-nonsense attitude. We sat down in a quiet corner of a cafe near her office. I slid the folder across the table. She opened it and whistled. You don't mess around. I like having a paper trail, I said. She sifted through the documents in silence, flipping through bank statements, the POA forms, screenshots of texts, and printouts from the business registry. After about 15 minutes, she looked up. This smells bad. Real bad. You think there's something there? She tapped the POA form. This witness signature is shady. Technically legal, but ethically suspect. And if your dad didn't fully understand what he was signing, there's room to challenge it. Especially if your brother's already making financial decisions that benefit him directly. He is, I said. I've got records of him using company funds for personal purchases. And there's a recording. He admitted that he thinks Claire and I are out of the picture. Her eyebrows raised. A recording? Clear as day. I have it saved on 3 different encrypted drives. Marissa smiled. Jonah, I think we can work with this. She outlined the basics. If I could prove that David coerced Dad into signing, or that he was using his position for personal gain, I could petition for the POA to be revoked. If Dad was still of sound mind, he could reassign it, or dissolve it entirely. If not, we could potentially push for guardianship review. It would be complicated, but possible. I asked what I needed. She said, witnesses, proof, and someone who still believes in you. I thought of Claire. I nodded. I've got all 3. Back at home, I finally told Claire everything. She didn't react the way I expected. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just stood up, walked to the kitchen, and came back with a small spiral notebook. She flipped it open to the middle and handed it to me. Inside were notes. Dozens of them. Dates, conversations, details about Dad's behavior, David's visits, and odd withdrawals from shared accounts. She had even scribbled in how much Dad's place probably cost based on the brochure she'd found online. She'd been keeping track this whole time. You think I didn't notice? She said quietly. I'm not as dumb as he thinks I am. No, I said, smiling. You're not. We decided to tell Dad together. It was a Saturday when we drove to see him again. Claire was dressed like she was going to a job interview, and I had my laptop and copies of everything Marissa had helped me prepare. Dad was surprised again, though this time, I could see the walls going up as soon as he opened the door. You two again, he said warily. We need to talk, I said. About David. He sighed, stepping aside. I told him not to make this messy. Claire spoke before I could. He's already made it messy. He sold the house out from under me. Took your accounts. Put you in here and locked everyone else out. Dad didn't respond. So I opened the laptop and played the recording. David's voice, smug and clear. He's better off out of the picture, honestly. Claire's a mess, and Jonah's a ghost. I'm the only one who's ever done anything real in this family. Dad finally sees that. Dad's eyes narrowed. I watched his face closely. I never said that, he muttered. No, I said. But he did. While speaking on your behalf. I slid the papers across the table. This is everything he's done with your accounts since getting POA. And the witness on your document? His business partner. Not a medical professional. Not a neutral third party. Why would he? Dad started. Because he doesn't see you as a father, Claire interrupted. You're a means to an end. He's playing you like a retirement plan. We didn't yell. We didn't beg. We laid out the facts. And then we left. We didn't wait for him to respond. Because it wasn't up to him anymore. That week, things moved fast. Dad called Marissa's office the next day. Said he wanted to review the POA with someone not on David's payroll. A week later, she sat down with him privately and confirmed our suspicion. He hadn't known half of what he'd signed. She filed the motion to suspend David's power of attorney. We submitted the evidence. The recording, the financials, the signature conflicts. Then we waited. David didn't respond right away, but I knew he would, and I was ready for him. Because the best part? He had no idea how much I knew. No clue how far I'd gone. He thought I was still that ghost. Still that quiet, forgettable middle child. He didn't see me coming, and I wasn't done yet. Not even close. 2 weeks after the motion to suspend David's power of attorney was filed, I got the email I'd been waiting for. Subject: Hearing scheduled. Estate review petition. From Marissa Chong. Body: Jonah, we're on. Your father will be present. Claire should attend. David has been notified. I read it twice, then once more for good measure. This was it. The moment everything we'd endured, the betrayal, the silence, the dismissal, started to tilt in our favor. But this wasn't about winning in a dramatic courtroom showdown. I didn't want revenge that looked like a scene from a legal drama. I wanted something colder, smarter, permanent. I wanted David to fall under the weight of his own ego. And now, the cracks were starting to show. He called me the day before the hearing. For the first time in months. You really think you're going to win this? His voice was tight, controlled, almost amused, but not quite. You have no idea what you're doing. I'm not doing this for me, I said calmly. You made this bed, David. You tucked the corners in tight. Jonah, he sighed, and for the first time, I could hear it, the hint of panic buried beneath the performance. You've always been soft, always wanted people to like you. But this isn't you. You don't belong in this fight. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. That's where you're wrong. I've always belonged here. You just never noticed. Then I hung up. Claire and I drove to the courthouse together. Neither of us spoke much. She held a folder on her lap the whole time, the one with her spiral notebook and copies of the withdrawal logs David thought no one noticed. I had my laptop and the recording, cued and ready. We walked into the hearing room at 10:58. David was already there, seated across the aisle in a tailored suit, flipping through his phone like this was just another Monday meeting. He didn't look at us. Dad sat near the front, quiet, hunched in a beige windbreaker. I didn't know what he was thinking. He hadn't spoken to either of us since the last visit. But he was here, and that mattered. When the judge entered, we all stood. The hearing began. Marissa spoke first, calmly presenting the motion to suspend and review the medical and financial power of attorney, citing evidence of undue influence, self-serving financial activity, and ethical violations in the witnessing process. She was methodical, sharp. The room went still when she played the audio clip. David's voice filled the space. He's better off out of the picture, honestly. Claire's a mess, and Jonah's a ghost. I'm the only one who's ever done anything real in this family. Dad finally sees that. I didn't look at Dad when it played. I didn't have to. After that, David's lawyer scrambled, claimed the tape was taken out of context, claimed the financial decisions were legitimate, claimed the witness wasn't a conflict of interest because the document technically met the state requirements. Technically. It was his favorite word. But the judge wasn't buying it. Not with everything laid out. Paper trails, conflicting signatures, false employee filings, and the lease agreement on David's company condo that had nothing to do with elder care. Then came the best part. See, I hadn't stopped at just exposing David's manipulation of Dad. I'd kept digging. Through his business. And through his second investment arm. What I found was a shell company registered to a P.O. box in Delaware, tied to 2 dummy accounts. Those dummy accounts had received multiple payments from Dad's estate after David got POA. Marissa presented it like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. And here, she said, we have wire records from a shell entity called Garnet Fold Holdings. The bank account ends in 7731. That account received 3 separate payments of $11,000 each, all labeled facility support, originating from the estate account in question. However, Garnet Fold is not affiliated with the care facility Mr. Reynolds currently resides in. The judge raised an eyebrow. David's lawyer tried to object, but it was weak. Claire leaned over and whispered, he's sweating. I didn't even have to look. I knew. The judge called a recess. 10 minutes later, we were back in. Final judgment. Power of attorney suspended pending formal review. Access to all estate accounts frozen. Financial control transferred to a neutral third-party fiduciary appointed by the court. Review of David's conduct submitted for ethical and legal investigation, with potential civil penalties pending the results. David stood there in silence, face pale, lips pressed tight. Then he turned and walked out. No smugness, no smirk, just gone. Claire exhaled, shaky and slow. Her eyes welled up, but she blinked it away. Dad didn't say anything until we were outside. We stood under the courthouse steps, the autumn wind tugging at our jackets. He looked at me. Really looked. I didn't know, he said softly. I know, I replied. You should have. He nodded. There was nothing else to say. A month passed. David didn't call. He couldn't, even if he wanted to. Our father's accounts were sealed, his access revoked. The court-appointed fiduciary reached out to me and Claire to confirm our dad's expenses were now being handled with transparency. Every statement was clean. No more shadow payments. No more missing funds. The shell company was under formal review. And while the criminal side was still pending, David's name had already started to lose its shine in his business circles. His agency's social media went quiet. His personal accounts went private. Marissa told me, over another coffee, his name will never carry the same weight again, even if he avoids jail. I'm okay with that, I said, because this wasn't about jail. It was about truth. It was about dragging everything he'd buried into the sunlight and watching him squint against the brightness. Claire started coming by more often. Her apartment was cozier now, warmer. She painted the walls a light sage green and adopted a stray cat that liked to knock over her coffee mugs. One evening, we sat on my balcony, wrapped in blankets, watching traffic buzz in the distance. She nudged me. You really did it. We did it, I said. She smirked. You were the brains. I was just the girl with the notebook. Hey, I laughed. That notebook kept us grounded. Then she got quiet. What happens now? I knew what she meant. The family. The pieces. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe nothing. Maybe we rebuild. Or maybe we let it go. She nodded. And that was enough. 3 months after the hearing, I got a letter in the mail. It was from David. Just a single page. Jonah, I don't know what to say. Maybe I never did. You were always quiet. Always there. Even when none of us deserved you to be. I messed up. I won't make excuses. I thought I was doing what had to be done, but somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing people as people. You saw me clearly, and you still took the high road. I don't expect forgiveness, but I respect you now. That might not be worth much, but I mean it. David. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not because I forgave him, but because I didn't need anything from him anymore. I had built a life without his approval, without Dad's nod, without their spotlight. And in doing so, I'd found something better than validation. I'd found freedom, the kind that doesn't require permission, or permission slips, or a family's fake blessing. Just peace. Claire and I spent Thanksgiving together that year. We made pasta instead of turkey, watched a dumb action movie, laughed until we cried. And as I cleaned the dishes and she hummed from the living room, I caught my reflection in the window. And for the first time in a long, long time, I saw someone worth noticing.
Okay, it's not good, but like, do we have, I probably hardly have any muscles left at this point. Fuck. I haven't gymmed in so long. This is not good. It's okay. We'll go back to we'll have to go back to the gym at some point. The weight is snatched. I haven't eaten. I think that's why. Previous angle was better. Really? So what, like this? Like here? You guys think this is better? Your default stat's impeccable. Thank you, Shay. Probably not as good as you. You actually like have hella muscles and stuff. Okay, we're gonna wash the rice.